Chapter 10.
I came here to tell you that I am going to do something that will make you hate me, but I have to. I went to Aunt Nolly's house before the trial. I was wearing a white dress that went along with my white victim character. You don't. Aunt Nolly didn't look at me, but it seemed as though she knew what I was referring to. I am sorry. Let it go. She was finishing a dress and our conversation wasn't stopping her from working. I can't. He's in me now. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything and then covered it with her hand. I am your family. He is just a black man. A black angry man. Family is everything. Not when they kill you. I was probing her. I gave her a chance to tell me the truth, but she didn't. We are bombarded by things that are not fair, but being brave is not going to change anything. She looked at me with the corner of her eye. People, as they grow older, become more accepting to evil, just like Aunt Nolly. How do you know? Things will be the same. Nothing will change. She shook her head slowly. I'm going to do it anyway. I closed my hand with pressure. It's always going to be there. Whatever you do, it will never be enough for them. It's bigger than me. I want to do the right thing. What's right? She muddled her pink lips aggressively. Right is doing good for others. I approached the window and I could see Rhodesians walking to the justice court. There is no right thing. You do the right thing and someone gets hurt, she explained. I know, but I am willing to get hurt for them. I already built an image. I already see a better future of this land. I thought about my dreams. Destroy that image. Aunt was sour, as sour could be. Older people have this constant habit of killing younger people's expectations because of their failures. Don't ask me to choose between you and them. I will choose them, I told her point blank. You choose him, not them. She meant that I was doing it for Vince and not anything else. They chose me to do this. They called me and I answered. I mentioned my calling from the higher power. She thought what I was doing was stupid. I have been called stupid so many times that I wondered why they chose a stupid girl to do this. He knew you would care. She remained talking about Vince. Deep down she was right. I was moved by love more than anything. What do you want from me? I yelled at her. Stop. Stop whatever you are going to do. Just stop. You don't know what you are dealing with. Whatever reason you have to do this, either vengeance or love, dismantle it. Everything she said sounded like there was an undercover hurdle. There was another real reason for her to prevent what I was going to do. Vengeance? I was battling with my own mind, trying to understand. Remember, this whole thing was because of Juvie. Then it was love. Now it's being right, being fair, being a hero. And then what? You will always find reasons for being heroic. There was some profound truth in Aunt Nolly's words, but whatever she said wasn't going to stop me. Whatever made Aunt Nolly so wise, she definitely didn't learn it in the tailor's room. Stop me, I challenged her. She touched her perfect skin, looked up high, and ignored me. I also ignored her warnings. There was never a trial for a black man, but when the daughter of one of the best lawyers in our land was abducted by a black man, we made it happen. It was about power. Racism was supported by power. People who got the power were automatically racist. And for the first time, I was also using my power, taking full advantage of my white privileges. A trial is supposed to test your morality and bring justice where there is injustice. That means to evaluate you and your crime. But there wasn't a real crime here. Just a bitter white girl who wanted to hurt someone who didn't love her. They were all castigating Vince. Vince didn't ask for a white lawyer, and they agreed because they thought it would be easier for them to win against a black lawyer. They would win anyway. Amel was assigned to be the lawyer, and he was the only black person allowed to come to the courtroom. They didn't even have to allow Vince to have a lawyer. There was no point. If you can make a trial happen, even though the accuser has pleaded guilty, you can make anything happen. Mom picked me up from Aunt Nolly's house and we walked in the direction of the courthouse. She was holding my hand the whole time. I left my bicycle at home, but I wanted you to come with me since it was one of the witnesses. There were grey bars surrounding the court, trying to be fair, not black and not white. There were so many steps, like more than 20. The entrance was way up there. Every step Mom would stop and breathe, like she was more scared than I was. She was wearing a light blue dress with golden buttons, too pretty for a trial and too pretty for what was going to happen to her. Almost reaching the last steps, I heard someone shrieking. It was a familiar voice. It was a Jew. When did these people become familiar to me? I stopped on the last step and I looked back. I could see the whole land. The houses looked very close to each other. I kept searching everywhere for a Jew and I couldn't see her. Mom made a sign for me to look at one of the dark tunnels on the east. It was darker than ever. Black people all over the tunnel, screaming, pushing and pushing. There were law enforcement agents with their white uniforms, which didn't make sense at all. I didn't have to interact with black people to know that white uniforms didn't make sense for any type of job. They all stood in line, preventing a Jew and the others to come this side. They wanted to come and support Vince, but they weren't being let in. I went down. On every step, I just climbed and I ran to their direction. I reached them and I shouted, "Let them in!" I used my white voice and I ordered it. "No, it's not safe," one of the policemen warned me. His face was red and he was sweating. He was holding a Jew and I knew how hard it was to control her, either mentally or physically. "It's okay. They deserve to see this. Maybe they will finally get it, that they shouldn't mess with us." I sounded like a white girl with black anger. I was on the white people's side and at that point, I had to convince them to let them in. The officer in charge made a sign to the others to release them. They rested their arms. A Jew was the first to come in. White trash. She was oozing with anger. She was disappointed in me for not following her advice to fight for Vince and on the contrary, made the situation even worse. Amina slowly passed by me, looking at me like she trusted me and I needed that. Gunda didn't even mind looking at me. He was focused on being the spearhead, leading his people to the direction of the court. There were so many, more than the usual gathering at Amina's rendezvous. Mom was at the door waiting for me. She didn't ask any questions. My parents' behavior was not alarming anymore. Nothing was normal anymore. Dad was already inside as well as Amel. They placed me in a room. It wasn't the courtroom. It was a room they told me to stay in since I wasn't allowed to be in the same room with Vince. They assumed I was so traumatized by the incident that I couldn't face him. They were trying to protect my lucidity since Vince was the abductor. Little did they know that Vince wasn't capable of touching me or doing anything to hurt me except emotionally. It was wrong of me to make them believe I was scared of Vince in any way. If something happens to me, Vince won't have anything to do with it, but some people might have. I was in the room with an officer there. A white officer that looked scared of me for having interacted with a black person. There was a door in the room that would take me to the courtroom and the other that would take me to the corridor. Everything was wood and glass. I could see a few people's faces from the room. I saw Vince wearing all black, sitting with Amel on a perfect rectangle table. Slightly to the left, there was another table where Dad, who was my lawyer, was sitting. "All rise," the court registrar said, and there was silence. "The Honorable Court brings forward Rhodesia versus Siyanda Oluwatobi, case number 108. The state brings charges of abduction of a minor against Siyanda Oluwatobi." The judge got up first. He was up there by the bench. I knew this voice. I knew I had heard it before. Dad was the first to start. I stood up and I leaned close to the door and the window that would let me see what was happening inside. "My lord, the state plans to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the accused is guilty of abduction." I couldn't hear everything Dad was saying to the judge. Jodi Collins was only 16 when she engaged on having secret meetings with Mr. Oluwatobi. But I kind of knew everything he was going to say already. He has been preaching it since I was born. Maintain integrity of this land. Sacrifice someone to show an example. To keep peace. It was an opening argument. Realizing the fact that the law is not made for a righteous person, but for those who are lawless and rebellious, for the ungodly and sinners, for the unholy and profane, for those who kill their fathers or mothers, for murderers and immoral men, and kidnappers and liars and perjurers, and whatever else is contrary. Dad was good. He was doing everything to make the sentence harsher or heavier. The more he talked, the more I got scared. When he said, "Father," I knew it would break Vince. We have shown the court that Sianda Oluwatobi is not worthy of freedom. He is a threat to us. Put them all underground. Dad's tirade meant that he wanted to put every black person in prison. The majority of the crowd, which were whites, made sounds of contentment. They were winning. I guess I was winning. I hoped Amel had something ready. He knew the book by hand, but he wasn't passionate about hating white people, and we needed someone who was. Legal representative of the accused, please. I had the judge call Amel. Amel always looked like he was sleepy. He walked carefully to the center of the court, breathed easily, and proceeded. Sianda Oluwatobi is indeed not worthy of freedom. Limited freedom. He is worthy of absolute, perpetual, measureless freedom. On the contrary, Jodi had free will. She walked to those dark tunnels voluntarily every day for 2 years. It sounded as though he was telling a story with facts. Yes, he took 2 years of my life abusing my sanity. We don't want war. No one is going to win or lose. We don't want violence. Let us share words. Words give a chance. When you use your force, it can cause drastic consequences, and you can't undo it. Words are willing to be forgiven. Let us forgive each other. Amel was too impartial. I could see Amina and Ajua frowning. He sounded biased. Earth is a living organism, and you need to feed it with good thoughts. Preserve those thoughts. I could tell Amel was high on dark plants. He was also running out of breath. His condition was kicking in. Amina said he couldn't do certain things. He had to constantly rest. He looked weak, but still nothing was stopping him from pleading for peace. Your Honor, how many are we? He asked the judge, referring to Rhodesian population. I didn't know we could demand anything from the judge. 42,000 habitats. From my window angle, I couldn't properly see the judge's face. Wrong. 78,000. Amel corrected the judge. He was a good negotiator. He counted his people, of course. His tone was changing. He was now defending his people. How can you just ignore us? These people here. He pointed at his people sitting. The trial was no longer about me and Vince. We all knew there was a bigger issue here. The book tells us to do good. Is this good? What you did to us? Amel was gaining his voice. Objection, Your Honor. Dad interrupted him. Objection overruled. Was Judge Davis on the black side? He seemed amazed by Amel's intelligence. The law is clear. The law has to suit everyone. Stop condemning us. Stop! Every person has a part in the blame. I believe in the book, but not in the audacity of the book. He started squealing like a demoniac. I have never seen him like this. Like a Jew possessed his body. Objection, Your Honor. We are not discussing law views. We are discussing a crime here, Dad stated. He didn't even look at Amel or acknowledge his presence. Objection overruled. Judge Davis looked like he wanted Dad to shut up and just focus his attention on Amel. It's impossible not to love. The moment two people interact, they eventually love each other. Amel was referring to me and Vince's relationship. What constitutes evil? Anything that does not promote love is evil. They love each other. Amel asked himself a rhetorical question, but his attempts were pointless. They saw Vince as a pedophile and not a lover. Dad finally looked at Amel angrily, like telling him, "How dare you say my daughter loves a black old man?" Amel didn't lie. I realized that no matter what Amel said, it was obvious that I was going to win this case. Deep down, my real winning would be if Vince won. Vince had nothing to declare. He decided not to say a word. Also, there were no witnesses. The only possible witness would be the person who made the anonymous charge, who later will be punished by Judge Jodi. You will see. This person decided not to come clean and sit and watch. The witnesses of the accused didn't think it was needed because Vince did plead guilty. I was getting bored of being trapped in that room with a security guard. I had a knock from the corridor door. The guard opened the door. It was Cindy. You are not allowed inside. The man told her. Cindy! I said it as I saw how disturbed she looked. Jodi! She desperately wanted to tell me something. He stopped her from coming inside. She tried pushing him, but he was stronger than her. He was basically closing the door on her face. She opened her mouth slowly and delivered me the news. I could read her lips. My whole body was shaking. What Cindy told me was worse than any story I saved in my mind that awakens me up every night. He finally closed the door. Another person came and knocked. I prayed it was Cindy to tell me that she lied, that she was joking, that what she told me wasn't true. It was another officer to tell me it was my time to testify. They both held me like I was the oppressor and walked me to the witness stand. As I walked, I saw everyone in the arena. Black people were on the right side, behind Vince and Amel. White people were on the left side, behind Dad. I had never seen so much wood in one room. Everything was made of wood. The concept of the furniture was hazardous. If black people wanted to fight, they could just break things and use them as weapons. The chairs were properly organized. There were officers in each corner of the room. I looked up high. The ceiling was so high for no reason, higher than church. There was a yellowish light in the room. I looked at James and Eric. Their energy told me they supported me in whatever I was going to do, but I didn't know what I was going to do. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The judge told me to repeat it. He was wearing a red gown and a white robe. It was the first time I was seeing his face completely. I remember now. He was the man who I saw quarreling with Aunt Nolly. I didn't know he was a judge. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I did. Spell your name, please. Dad came to the stand and started. Jodicollins. How old are you? Dad asked me. 18. I knew my age was a crucial factor for this case. How old were you when the crime happened? What crime? 17. I was playing along. Did you finish school? Dad continued. Yes, I did. Thanks to Vince, I told myself. When did you meet Mr. Oluwatobi? I can't recall, I answered. Dad gave me the creepiest look. How did you meet Mr. Oluwatobi? I needed history lessons. He was my tutor. I tried to be careful with my words, not to make it worse for Vince. When were your tutorials over? Dad was worse than I when I carried on pressing people to find out what happened to Juvie. I can't recall. It was just you and him in a room. Were you alone? Sometimes. I had total immunity from Dad's questions because I grew up listening to him talking about his cases. Identify Mr. Oluwatobi in this room. It was a silly question, but I guess it was part of the procedure. I pointed at Vince. How do you describe him? Angry. Were you scared of him? Maybe. Scared of losing him. What is maybe? Judge Davis interrupted. I was. I had to go along with my victim character. Do you remember feeling any type of way when he was around you? Dad was poised to ruin Vince. Objection, Your Honor. He presented the same question twice. Amel interrupted Dad. Objection sustained. Judge Davis was fair, or tried to be. He seemed tired of this injustice, but he was probably alone in this. How close did you get, leading to the abduction? Dad went back to torture me. I don't understand the question. I was resistant to let him get anything from me. Did you notice any difference in the defendant's demeanor? The questions were sort of weird. and psychological. No. How frequently did you visit him? Every week. Where did you go predominantly? To his house or the tutorial house? Both. How did your relationship change after the tutorials were done? It progressed. I fell in love. What happened on the night Siyanda Oluwatobi abducted you? Dad approached my stand. I breathed in and out. Teachers always told me I was good with math because I was able to memorize the equations. So here it was, the showdown. I would have to tell every equation of evil I have learned so far. It was time. Victor Allerton fatally burned his girlfriend Angela Brown. Clarence Evans took his wife Madeleine's organs. Oleka Gagner stabbed his friend Diana till death. Alex Audrey abducted 4 girls and kept them in his basement for 14 years. I finally had my stage. I rattled everyone. They were not expecting anything like that. They didn't bargain for this. I could see everyone with their mouth dropping open in surprise. They were completely shocked, like someone just came inside the room and touched their private parts, intimate parts. My memory took me back to school. I lied. I had seen evil before these stories, before everything. My first taste of evil was one day in school. I was pressed and I needed to go to the washroom. The girls' bathroom was far, so I decided to sneak to the boys' bathroom. At first, it appeared empty, and as I closed the door, I heard some boys' voices. They were talking about a girl's intimate parts, something so personal. I pictured Theo talking about my intimate parts, and that's why I decided to lose my virginity with him. Should I thank evil for that? If I wasn't in the toilet that day, I wouldn't mind Theo losing his virginity to another person. I wouldn't go crazy and find consolation in being a warrior of black people. I wouldn't subscribe to this war. Order, order. Judge Davis was enraged. He kept knocking with a small brownish and gold hammer. The officers didn't dare take me out of the stand. No one moved except Judge Davis, knocking and knocking. Sheila Jennings and Susan David killed their best friend. Arthur Johnson asphyxiated his daughter's boyfriend. Cedric and Kyle Jefferson doped and then killed their parents. Eddie Stanford and Jack Tyler both raped a girl. Vanessa Moore killed her baby. George Simpson's girlfriend sent men to abduct and kill him in the dark area. Kevin Martin stole from and then killed his girlfriend's dad. Sam Barras had an affair for 8 years and then decided to kill his mistress to protect his marriage. Noel Keith burnt his little brother's face with an iron. Yasmin Griffin stole from her mother-in-law and then killed her. I felt every wicked person leaving my body. I didn't stop. Vince was probably mad at me for not saying all names, but I tried. Something told me to look around. I saw Maya Grace whispering something into Aunt Nolly's ears. I dissected everything that moment. Ajua taught me how to read people and I nailed it. Nolly Jones has an affair with Maya Grace Wilson. The whole room looked at them. Before the trial, I gave Aunt a test and she failed. I begged her to tell me the truth, but she didn't. Have you ever felt like someone is helping you, but not really? That's how I felt about Maya Grace. She conned me to do something and then called me out for it. Why did you do it? It was a manipulative game and I fell for it. She started by selling the small truths, hiding the big things to gain the confidence. The infertile me believed her because before all that pain, I was stupid. She only made one mistake when she reported Vince. It could only be her. Aunt Nolly knew where I was and she confided in her, but not with the intention for her to press charges against Vince. Maya Grace was protecting her affair and the only way was using a distraction. Me. I was the distraction. If they gave our people something to talk about and judge, they would forget about them. Judge Davis knew about them and their affair and wanted to expose them. He was demanding from Aunt Nolly a case. He was exhausted from having to protect his people. Lawyers serve to sacrifice citizens, to give examples to the society. They have the ability to get individuals out of a sticky situation, and sometimes they enjoy seeing them in those situations. Doctors want us to get sick. Teachers want us to ask questions. They need to feel needed. They derive pleasure from the idea of having something that people need. Those carriers need to exist, I concluded. And lawyers and pastors keep us grounded in a way. Maya Grace gave Judge Davis the pleasure to judge a flea. Judges want to judge and lawyers want to win. They are all greedy, and crimes are their motivation. Sacrifice. I thought what Amina told me. I sacrificed my aunt. I looked at her. I adored her. Her face was loathing. It hurt more than anything, more than what was coming. She didn't deserve this, but she had some kind of blame. I remember her saying, "It's not my battle," and I realized she had another battle. Then Maya Grace saying, "I am not brave." Brave for what? What was she fighting for? Now we know. I don't know how I feel about my aunt sleeping with a woman, but if my body and Vince's body work together, I believe everything is possible. Order, order. Judge Davis kept trying to enforce decorum. Stop! Enough! Dad held my hand. It was hurting. Dad didn't care about Aunt Nolly, only about his reputation and how the family was seen in the land. How far would Dad go for reputation? I asked myself. We were about to find out. Michael Collins and Pastor Phillips killed Juvie Collins. Yes, Dad and Pastor Phillips killed Juvie. I said Dad's name like he was a stranger, and I wish he was after what I found out. There was a disturbance in the audience. He loosed my arm and looked at the audience, trying to say he didn't do it. It looked like it became his trial. Pastor Phillips was just standing there without showing emotions. Cindy told me this earlier. She went to tell her boyfriend that she finally found the courage to take him to court. When she was leaving, she heard Dad's voice coming from Pastor Phillips' office, and she heard them discussing the murder they had committed. She heard it, the same way I also heard it. Yes, I knew Dad killed Juvie long ago. I just didn't want to believe it. I had to play along so I wouldn't end up like Juvie. It was 3 a.m. I was in my room struggling to fall asleep. A voice told me to go down. Maybe it was Juvie. I did. I went downstairs and stopped by Dad's office, and I heard the usual two voices, his and Pastor Phillips. Did you make sure she was buried way down so there are no traces that her body has turned green? Dad asked Pastor Phillips. Yes, I did. Everything is under control. I ran in mute to my room. I didn't want to hear anything else so I could tell myself it was a dream or that I didn't have enough information. I guess we are all sacrificing family for justice or what we think is justice. Dad warned Juvie and exhorted her to stop seeing Gunda. At one point, she obeyed him and stopped. That's how her desolation started. But she couldn't end her affair. The feeling was too strong. They couldn't hide it anymore, and Dad had to take measures. Everyone remained looking at Dad, pretending to be surprised, but they all knew. Everyone knew. Everyone. Even Mom. I looked at her with disgust. Judith Collins has an affair with Francis Robinson. Mom looked embarrassed. This one took time for me to realize. Maybe that's why I saved it for the end. Mom had long hair for no reason. I guess she just wanted to impress her lover. When they assigned me for the history tutoring with Vince, there was another tutor, a white one, Francis. And Mom requested for another one, which happened to be Vince. Mom would never impose anything. Therefore, it meant there was something fishy. I hated Mom. I really did. Mom was selfish in the purest form. It was unbearable to hold her hands coming here. When the neighbor told Mom that story about the lady who was having an affair, she was advising her in a way on how to protect herself. She was warning her about what men are capable of when they found out their woman is cheating on them. And if Dad was capable of killing his own child, imagine what he would do to his wife. Where is the evidence for all this? Judge Davis needed proof from my blasphemy. Here, I took from my dress pocket a small book written by me and placed it on top of the stand. I looked at Vince. He was astonished by everything. I kept record of every story in my diary. A diary is part of every girl growing up. As they garner experiences, having to add those wicked stories to my journal was disgusting. You usually start writing a diary after your first kiss, your first love. I started writing it when I broke my evil virginity. Read my book. I was the one in charge now. Pain gave me superpowers. I knew I humiliated my family and myself in a way, but it felt powerful. The same way Ajua invaded our side naked. I wasn't ashamed of being miserable, of breaking down in public, making a fool of myself. I knew I was useful for something, for change. You know some of the names you mentioned are dead, Judge Davis said while he opened my diary and started unfolding it. But some are not. I looked at him. The judge seemed not to care about black or white issues. He actually wanted those cases to come to prominence so he could sit there and finally execute his job. What do you suggest? Judge Davis was starting to take me seriously. He didn't disregard my book as evidence. My diary had details of when the crimes happened, how, where, and the reason, just like Vince told me. Judge Davis knew he had to follow my instructions if he wanted to maintain some kind of justice in the land. Hold them accountable. I searched my parents' faces. I always thought they could do no wrong acts because they had children. The moment you bring a child to this world, you should become or try to be a good person. The book made me realize that bringing a child to this world should be equivalent to being born again. But nah, I see. It's safe to say that this little anarchy you created was not about Mr. Oluwatobi. But I still have one question. And you, what have you done, Miss Collins? I slept with a black man. I love a black man. I care for a black man. I betrayed my family for a black man. I would die for a black man. I lost my virginity to a black man. I lost my sanity for a black man. I am pregnant for a black man. It sounded like a poem. I softly touched my belly. Everyone shocked. A baby would be the best way to protest. Vince couldn't stop staring at me like he fell in love that moment. Is there anything else you would like to say? Judge Davis continued to give me the floor. Everyone was still sitting down for some reason. I always thought I had not seen evil before these people awakened me. I pointed at Amina, Ajua, and so on. But I did. On countless occasions. All my life I have seen people judge, criticize, lie, point fingers. That's how evil starts. That's how you feed evil. Dad was still in the middle of the room looking at me. People discriminating others. We all do that. It's unfortunate, but we do. Stop pointing fingers if you behave the same, or even worse, because you don't acknowledge the blame. Let's create a system for everyone. We are not the same, I understand that. We are different, but difference is okay. Don't make the difference a problem. Give them a choice. It sounded like the winner's speech. The room was silent and engulfed by shame. I didn't say anything that hasn't been said, but it has not been said by a white girl. Vince had done greater, more courageous things than I, and he suffered the consequences. That's why everyone knew Vince and his story. I left the stand a Dante. I started walking my way out. Through the middle of the room, I passed by Dad. He looked like if he could, he would kill me at that moment. I looked at Mom. She didn't meet my eyes. She was looking down, touching her dress buttons, trying to avoid me. I looked at Vince. He was smiling, as well as Amel, Ajua, Amina, and everyone on the black side. I left the courtroom without hearing the verdicts. I felt the autopsy of my speech, and I hoped to end the so-called black negativity. I felt lonely. I went to the place where I could talk to my sister. I sat in the grass, and I performed my talent, crying. Are you happy? Aunt Nolly's shadow approached me. I have never seen so much hate in Aunt Nolly's eyes. Whenever someone asks you if you are happy, you think about something that doesn't make you happy. I thought about all these lives that I ruined in a way just to make sure the life I was expecting was fair for him or her. This is not about me. It is about my child, the future of my child, the first generation of not being called evil by default. How can I give love and peace and fairness to my child if I don't have it? You can't give what you don't have. I am proud of you. Her eyes changed. I was surprised to hear that from her. Aunt was different from anyone I knew. She had integrity. I think she just wanted privacy to live her life. Aunt, do you think things are going to change? I went back to being the fragile and naive me. All that bravery from moments ago faded. I don't know. I really don't. But whatever happens, you did the right thing. It felt good to hear that. But I wasn't fulfilled the way I thought this would make me feel. Look! She pointed at one of the dark tunnels. I could hear noise. It was being demolished. There was no more gateway between the two worlds. We walked in their direction. All the black community were there breaking it with hammers and other tools. You bring hope to some of us. Seeing a Jewish smile made everything worth it. Who are you? Amina also came and looked mesmerized at me. Thank you. Amel closed my both hands and touched them. I looked at Vince coming out of the courtroom. I finally understood him. It took a lot to see all this and still be a good person. I was afraid of what I was going to become after coming to terms with what my parents did. Vince was angry because his dad killed his mom, some of his siblings, and several other people. I don't know what I was going to become after finding out that Dad killed Juvie. Should we go? Aunt held my hand. Like always, she had everything figured out. She knew I needed her. Dad was taken into custody, and I don't think Mom wanted me anywhere near our house. I was going to stay with my aunt, for at least now, until things calmed down. We walked together to her house. I looked at her, whatever she was, and whoever she decided to give her body to. I don't think it happened naturally. I think Aunt was forced to be like that. I think she experienced so much suffering from a man that she decided to go the other side. Her other side was a woman. The judge considered the circus I created a mistrial, and Vince's charges were taken off. Dad, Pastor Phillips, and a few others were sent to prison. However, the happy ending was still a work in progress. If it was peace that I wanted, I was still far from reaching it. The following days were not pleasant. Aunt would wake up early every day to clean outside. They would throw at us all kinds of things, tomatoes and spoiled food. It stank. Aunt would clean without complaining, nor looking at me in a way that would make me feel guilty. She wasn't mad at me at all, which was unexpectedly comforting. I think she felt freedom in a way. All these years she felt oppressed. On my defense, Aunt was more hated than I was. I did put some members of their families in prison, but I wasn't engaging in any act that was considered the devil's creation. Maya Grace disappeared, and Mom didn't bother to come to talk to us. Aunt was teaching me how to crochet to make a sweater for my baby when we had a knock. I thought it was Mom. Aunt opened the door and let Vince in. She left us in the tailor room to talk. You need to come with me. Vince said it like nothing happened, like he never broke my heart or anything. Why should I? I didn't stop crocheting. Please. You could tell he had to work on saying please. He wasn't used to saying certain things. You used me, remember? I wanted him to take a leap. I am sorry. We were making progress. From please to I am sorry. We were almost there. I secretly smiled. For what? I pressured him. For not realizing what you were. He tried. I am white. Yes, you are, but that's not all you are. You are brave and the mother of my child. He got closer to me. I am bound to realize that in this land, I can only trust myself. I am alone. Vince always looked like he knew more than I, more about life. His eyes always seemed as they saw more than I did, but not today. Today we looked equally broken. I love you. He said it benevolently. He extracted all the love from his heart, all the remaining of it, to tell me that. I didn't want that kind of love. The kind of love that you're forced to love. the one that you grow to love, the one you love because you realize what the person is or what the person is capable of doing for you. I wanted the kind of love Theo gave me. He didn't care whether I was brave or good in math. He just loved me. No reason why. One day, our Rhodesian air just made him love me. I know, I loved Vince, but not with the same intensity anymore. Sometimes love gets tiring. We need mold, torso, and screw-up love. All this made me alienate myself from the feeling, but it was refreshing to see him fully embracing it now. I left the room without saying anything. He didn't know my decision yet. I started packing my things, and I came back with a bag. Aunt also came to say goodbye. You will be safe with him. She hugged me. I regretted exposing her life like that. She would never have peace because of me. Sometimes I ask myself why I did it, but I don't regret it. At least not everything. I regretted finding out all the things I did. What you don't know doesn't kill you, right? I learned that. The whites taught me that. I wish I kept her secret, the same way I preserved Juvi's secret. Yes, Juvi had a secret. I was channeling my information, and I realized we were all using each other for our purposes. It was a double entendre in my mind. I availed Aunt to live happily ever after with my so-wanted black family, and I saved Juvi's secret because I didn't need it. Maybe I was saving it for later, or I really cared about Gunda's feelings. Juvi was pregnant. I sprawled on Vince. We were both sitting on his doorstep, enjoying the weather. It was almost spring. My baby would probably be born in summer, and he would be cheerful and happy. We both touched my belly, my slightly bigger belly. My belly button was struggling, and it was at the verge of exploding. My boobs were gaining life. They were so full and it hurt. We could see someone coming in our direction. I smiled, seeing Aunt coming to visit me. It had been weeks since I left her place. Her face didn't respond to my smile. I was scared to hear what she had to say. It's Mom, she said. What happened to Mom? I was back at doing what my body knows the best, either shaking or crying. Mom. She couldn't say it. Vince held me. My mother killed herself. A legacy of suicides. Mom did it. Mom was the brave one. Not me, not Juvi. She was the one. She hanged herself, or her lover hanged her. We didn't gather much information. I lied. I didn't hate my mother. Not at all. I still loved her, but I was disappointed in her. She knew what Dad did, but she pretended she didn't. And now, she only decided to kill herself when people knew what she did, not when Dad killed her own daughter. You think you can do evil if people are not looking. If they are, it changes everything. I went back to the house. I slowly walked upstairs to my bed. I laid on my bed. Why? I tortured myself. Vince once told me that he stopped asking why when one day one of his sister's leg was swollen. She woke up one day and it was like this, no explanation. She was forever that way, and she died that way without any cogent reason. Before, I would find clarity from my experiences in school, but after all this, I had another source of knowledge. Vince was my good voice. Whenever I didn't understand or couldn't cope with something, he was there. He came to join me in bed. He laid next to me. He didn't say anything. Aunt was right. You do the right thing, and people get hurt. People die. You wish for something, then you get it, but it's not exactly what you wished for. You fall in love, and one person loves more than the other. There is no full fairness, happiness, or anything. It took me only days to recover from my mom's death. Death was becoming something common to me, therefore I knew how to handle it. Aunt Nolly gave me the keys to our house. It was mine now. I decided to give it to Amina. I wanted her and the others to go reside in the white side. They couldn't do it if they didn't have a house or the means to make one. Having the first black family house was the first step. For Amina and the others, it was still new. It was good for them to explore it and enjoy our privileges. In my case, I wanted to be absolutely withdrawn from their whiteness. But I still had one thing to do before I permanently decided not to interact with my people anymore. I forgot how the prison looked like an abyss. The guards were surprised to see me, but they let me in. I stepped down and I looked for Dad in between the cells. There were a few familiar faces. Their intimidating looks told me I was behind their imprisonment. Dad was sitting reading a book. He looked at me and put the book down. "Fascinating," he said. "What is fascinating?" I asked with a certain level of respect. "How he played you." Dad was referring to Vince. Yes, he did. I was intrigued by them and persuaded into helping, but I don't regret it. I tried to use my semantics as a gist of explaining myself. I have zero interest in what led you to do what you did. I hope you can deal with the consequences. Dad didn't find my speech at the trial very inspiring, and he looked disappointed for not having a racist daughter. I know, I am dealing with them now. I kept searching for a glimpse of accountability or perhaps remorse from Dad, but nothing. "Can I ask you something, Dad?" I called him Dad with the hopes to have an honest answer. I didn't wait for his answer. "Why were you so distant, cold, austere to us?" I was referring to me and Jovi. She also needed answers from him. I hoped that wherever she was, she had forgiven him. "I had to. I wanted you guys to be strong." Dad sounded like Vince. Maybe that's why I fell in love with him. Perhaps in a parallel world, they were the same person. But I hope Vince will not treat our child like this. I understand. I really did, or tried to. But I would never find within myself to understand why he killed Jovi. Honor your father and your mother. All those book studies and you didn't learn anything. You decided to join evil. He quoted the book. Dad had a corrupted mind. Sometimes you see the signs that feed you with what you want to believe in, and there was nothing I could do to bring him back. Evil or good depends on people's perception, and from what I have seen, you are the evil one. I accused him bluntly. I just wanted to protect my family. It was the first time he partially admitted his crime and tried to justify it. By killing them, I confronted him. We were not at the dinner table anymore. Dad was not a decent person anymore. He was a killer in prison. All these years, all the things I tried to teach you, you didn't learn anything. Dad had been molesting my thoughts since I was a toddler. He practiced racism out loud. Pastor Phillips, on the contrary, did it underneath. I want to unlearn everything you taught me. I wasn't scared of him anymore. You were informed by what you think you learned. They made you believe in their occult. You can't talk about things you don't know. You don't know the history of this land and what they have done to us. They have diseases. They are dangerous. Dad's words disowned me more than I already was. I didn't want to be his child anymore. Diseases? It reminded me of a girl in school who used to call black people ugly. I didn't like that word or that girl. I kept realizing that my calling for this was long ago. Dad wasn't capable of apologizing. At least Vince was, I deduced. Dad spent all his life using black people to elevate himself, make them feel inferior so he could feel superior. I was afraid of what Dad was going to say about my child, so I tried to avoid the subject and concentrate on Mom. Do you know what really happened to Mom? Maybe he killed her. It was possible because what I learned about men made me realize that Dad was more devastated with Mom cheating on him than her death. Cheating was only approved of if men were the ones guilty of it. Men were superior to us in all possible ways, which was sad, but everything about this miserable life was sad. Men were the worst thing they created. They didn't have to finish school. They had the highest grade of evil. You did this. You ruined our family because of your blackie lover. Just like your sister was going to. I stopped her. I had to. Dad was awakened from his delusional quillia. I thought about how Mom wanted me to accept that Jovi was in a better place. Funny enough, Mom was the one in a better place, away from Dad and his family-fixed psychotic beliefs. And you wanted to stop me. I squeezed my eyes trying to prevent the image of Dad killing me, the same way he killed Jovi. I was glad Dad's mental abuse didn't affect me fatally, but I couldn't be there anymore. I left with a melody of losing. If Vince had a fear of rejection, I had a fear of losing. It was becoming too common. I wasn't well acquainted with having a partner, sleeping with them, doing everything with them, but I learned to enjoy it. I realized having sex was just a small part of life. Our closeness was sustained by the little things. I learned that Vince was allergic to flowers. Kind of expected, right? Me and Vince were polar opposites, but I was learning that I would never be satisfied with anyone else. His soul fed me with the love my family never gave me. But no matter how much Vince held me, I couldn't sleep, knowing he was going to die. His condition was a death sentence, and soon he would be sentenced on the trial of life. Vince left me taking a nap. I was alone in the house when I felt my bones contracting. The bed was wet. My bladder was gushing out pains. It was painful. I touched my belly. It seemed my baby was ready to come out to this side of the land. I dragged myself on the cold wood floor. I was limbless and flexible. I could see all the liquids coming out of my body, leaving traces of me on the floor. I shouted Vince's name. He went to get some kindling, but he wasn't far, so I continued to call his name. The more I screamed, the more it hurt. I crawled my body on the stairs and I slowly reached the base of the stairs. I tried to grab things to lean on, but I couldn't. I felt my bones agitated. Something was preventing them from locomotion. My duct tunnel was blocked. It appeared as every part of me was trapped, and the only way out was through my duct tunnel, and it wasn't demolished yet. I needed someone to pluck my baby out of me. I didn't stop shrilling. The pain was unbearable. Jodi! Ajua was shocked by all the blood coming out of me. I only realized how much it was seeing the distress on her eyes. Help me! How come giving life was so deadly? Ajua placed me in a position that I assumed that's how women gave birth. She sat on the floor in front of my legs and ripped my clothes off. I can't lie, I was scared of her. She touched me like she had done it before, but still I couldn't trust her. Push it! She told me what to do, and I tried to do it. I wanted to purposely pass out and wake up later, but I had to endure it. I wanted dark plants. For some reason, I thought about it. I think it would ease the pain. The more I pushed, the more I screamed. I saw Ajua holding something. I could see hair. It was my baby. I fell asleep on my blood, but when I woke up, I was in the couch. I have never seen anything more beautiful than what was in front of me. Vince was holding my baby, our baby. He was so small, his foot even smaller. He didn't have a defined color. He looked reddish and about to blossom. My little precious thing was smiling, or trying to, in his dad's arm. I offered my hands to hold him. Vince placed him on my arms, and I realized at that moment that the purpose of life was giving life. I didn't know Vince was capable of giving me something so precious. I found my whys, my why for everything. Miro, Vince said as he touched the baby's head. What? I couldn't take my eyes off the baby. His name is Miro. It was natural. My happy ending was here. Amina and the others arranged for my people, or half of my people, to come meet my son. I and Vince were waiting where Amina usually hosts her faith talks. It was cozy and sandy. The climate was speckled by happiness. I wrapped Miro in beige clean sheets and tried to protect him from anything and everything. Amel, Ajua, and Gunda were welcoming Cindy, Eric, and James. They approached us and each one tried to hold the baby, one worse than the other. I didn't want to give them the baby, but I did. Everyone around us was smiling like Miro's birth was some kind of victory. Ajua had a different hairstyle, some kind of plaits. There were so many in her head, as if something went wrong, we could all live in her head. I laughed at myself. I couldn't stop laughing. They were all standing around me, praising Miro. I saw my aunt coming, my one and only Aunt Nolly. She smiled and I could hear her smile shouting, "There is a way." She asked to hold the baby and I nodded. I looked around. Amina was singing. Ajua was teaching Cindy how to dance. Eric was trying duck plants and socializing with Amel. And James was enjoying the food. I saw Theo and his family coming. Observing them was like seeing my second option of a happy ending. I either could be a common white beautiful mother and wife, just like Marianne, or I could be a broken whitish woman with a black soul completely torn, with no family, and a baby that would challenge humankind. I chose the latter. Theo seemed happy. What else could one ask for? Black and white people dancing and smiling together, just like in my dream. And just like a dream, it didn't last. I felt dizzy. My body was warning me of something. My pain was slowly starting to kick in, and it felt like a trailer, like my body knew before me what was going to happen. I touched my heart. I tried to understand what was happening. I looked around trying to understand the source of my anxiety. Miro was safe with Aunt Nolly, and Vince was over there admiring the trees. My family was okay. I looked at Vince once again. I shouted at him, "I love you!" Something told me to tell him that. His expression told me he couldn't hear me. So I shouted it again, and once again he didn't look lucid, like his brain shut down. As I got closer to him, I noticed he was sweating, like a wave of hot air came and engulfed him. He suddenly looked scared and sluggish. I tried to reach him, but something stopped me. I froze. He collapsed. He suffered a seizure. I finally released myself from my panicky attack and reached Vince's body. The others noticed my behavior and they all ran. I examined him like I was some kind of mortuary attendant. I looked up and screeched, "Why? You just couldn't let us win? You couldn't." I had a poignant smile. I didn't know who I was talking to, but by my question, we all knew he was dead. My ever after was dead. I felt a massacre in my heart. Vince was dead. Juvie was dead. Mom was dead. And Dad was dead to me. My feelings were posthumous. I didn't cry. It was the first time I didn't cry. Whatever I did, I wasn't going to bring him back. How could a conqueror die? How could a man like this die? How can all of him die? Why was I a part of this? Why did I need history lessons? Why did I sign myself for this? Why? This whole thing felt like one day I was passing by and someone called me, locked me in a room for 2 years and set a bomb. Not man, not life. Death is a bomb. And they chose who should be affected by it, who should be in the room and feel the injuries. I felt it. Dear they, my name is Jodi Collins. I met Vince when I was 16 and my world fell apart. Back then, I didn't understand, but I have grown to realize that even the horrible stuff was to build me. Sometimes people come to our lives to help us accomplish something. I don't know if I was helping him or he was helping me. All I know is that I am living the life that was intended for me, that I was destined for. He showed me my path and allowed me to do something for my land. We are deceived by a lot of things, especially by feelings, like love. Love is a distraction. It's a problem. Love for lust, for power, for supremacy, for domination. Still, I dived myself in this ocean of love and I drowned. Loving Vince was the hardest thing ever for me. A love derived from fear, knowledge, courage, and now, grief. Some say he took away my future, my white future, but I say he gave me one.